Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to HangarBicocca and Fondazione Elpis for organizing this talk, but mostly to Saodat Ismailova for accepting this conversation.
I'm very happy to speak with Sheida because of this deep connection to the Persian world, because there are certain things also we can understand wordless. Without just by knowing, just by looking at the landscape, by looking at certain patterns, by saying words that encode more than just words. And me being from Uzbekistan, it's a country that lays between two very important for us rivers, which are the only sources of water, Amudarya and Sirdarya. And I'm also kind of happy that we're sitting with this on the background of this work, which is called Stains of Oxus. And Oxus refers to the modern day Amudarya river. Oxus comes from a Greek word. This here we can also speak again about the syncretism and all the cultural and spiritual heritages that were left or shaped the region. So Uzbekistan stands in between these two universes of a nomadic world, which can be defined also as Turkic world. Please don't confuse it with Turkey or Turkish, because these were the nomadic tribes that migrated in 11th century, the Seljuks, and they came to the Byzantia and created what is Turkey today. But the Turks are related to the steppes. It's people that are related, that were moving together with the animals, with the nature, and with the climate and seasons. While the sedentary world, which is a Persian side, it's related to agriculture, to architecture, it's a written tradition, and it's more bound to the Zoroastrian background, while the Turkic universe is related to the animalistic world, which you can see in the Stains of Oxus, you can see in the Haunted, and in most of my works, this connection of the a hybrid or syncretic expression. Speaking about the Zoroastrianism, as you may know or you may not know, it's a religion that have worshipped for basic elements, which is earth, water, air, and fire, and it was all about respecting, taking care, about purity related to these elements, and making sure, I think, like speaking with the actual words would be like keeping up the sustainability of these four elements that create our life and hold up our life. Thinking about this ancient religion, which also sounds totally contemporary and so urgent today, it's also a way of getting back to it and rebound to it. So the metaphors and elements, I think, as the Zoroastrianism worshipped water, so here is Oxus, Amudarya, or in Arabic it was called Ceyhun. So even the title of a river was changing and transforming itself because of the influences of visions and spiritual practices and the presences. I'm sure there should be a name of Amudarya also in Old Persian and Pahlavi, which I don't know anymore, but I'm sure there is. But Oxus, it's a Greek title, and then Ceyhun, which means uncontrollable, because the river was changing its flow many times in history, thus changing totally the cultural formations in the region. Ceyhun also means crazy or uncontrollable, and then there is Amudarya, which is a Turkic name. But why is also a river that is important for me? Because it's a river that divides these universes of nomadism and sedentary. It's a river that also defines southern borders of the ex-Soviet Union. It's also a river that defines what you may know, what was called the Great Game in the 19th century, which was a huge geopolitical game between the two empires of Russia and the British Empire, where the Brits were pushing from the south while the Russians were pushing from the north. So when we think about that we end up in the Soviet Union, we have still this question, if the Russians were pushing to the south because of the land expansion, or they were pushing to the south because they were scared that the Brits would push to the north. So the Amudarya, this river, has all these meanings. And there is another very beautiful meaning about it, that the goddess of Amudarya is Anahita, which is a Zoroastrian goddess. It's a female goddess of fertility, it's a female goddess of life, and also her destiny is totally got transformed and mutated with all the influences that were passing by in the region. Today she's called Ambar Ona, which is a more Islamized version of Anahita. Then she has another expression called Albaste, which is it's a devil female presence, because Islam was trying to cleanse up the leftovers of previous beliefs, and Anahita became this very, a negative female character, though carrying fertility. And so this is about Amudarya and the meaning of Amudarya. And so, as I said, we have these two rivers, Amudarya in the south and Sirdarya in the north. So the land in between of these two big rivers is Uzbekistan. It's the space which you discover here in the exhibition. But of course, it's not only limited to that, because the works you see here, like Arslan Bob, is from Kyrgyzstan. It's already northern back of Sirdarya. And why I'm speaking so much about the water, it's not only because of the Zoroastrianism, as there were goddesses related to the water sources, but because also the water for us, it's very dramatic and very limited. We have a very limited access. We are the second country in the world that are twice landlocked. There is Liechtenstein and then there is Uzbekistan. So for us, water is an absolute sacred manifestation of nature.
Okay, so going back to Anahita as the divine goddess, like I think it's worth mentioning that it was the origins of Anahita goes back before the Zarathustra, and it was like the main goddess which was worshipped in the region, in the whole region, and yes, she was the goddess of the rivers. And it is interesting that I want to make a bridge to another work here, which is Chillekhana, that the word chehel is, the meaning is 40, and it's a sacred number in different religions, as you talked about the synchronicity between religions. But Anahita as the goddess it has always been depicted as a woman who was on the horses, and these horses were angry enough, and they were running with a speed that was running by the river, the longest river in the world, in the mythologies, of course. And the longest river of the world, they were passing by it and taking Anahita by the longest river of the world in 40 days. So let's take these 40 days and the fertility, the goddess of fertility of the water, and this number 40 chehel into the work of Chillekhana, that you can see it behind this screen. And it is a sacred number. It is Chillekhana is the place that you go there to take meditation, to cleanse your soul, to take part from the world, and go there for 40 days of purification of your soul. But here we see a woman who is sitting there for 40 days and in a kind of suffering, or underneath, giving a sense of underneath the surface of the earth. And I think it has something to do with the weather also in your culture, in the culture of the region. And I would like to ask you, what is the meaning of, and I know that you have been working with this number of 40 for a long time, and in document of 15, you've been working with Chel 10 and Chel Gaze and which means 40 girls or 40 maidens who are also sacred in the region. And you said when you turned 40, you stopped working about it. Can you expand on it a little bit?
In 2014, I presented my feature film in Berlin Film Festival. It was called Chile, 40 Days of Silence. It was a film that it took me a very long time to do, like feature film production. It has a scale, it has a production side, industry side, and so on. But what it allowed me is to enter the space of a research, as the time it took around 5 years to make this film, which helped me to research and to explore the question of 40 and what lays beyond the 40. And trying to go, I'm not going to repeat, like we all know the representation of the 40 in the monotheistic religions, but then I was trying to find it out, what about it in maybe the movement of the stars or the relation to the sun movement, but still there was no answer. And my conclusion would be that it's related to the biological time within our body. There is a renovation in a body that happens every 40 days. So I think that it's very basic. But what was kind of haunted me and trapped me, it was the manifestation of this 40 in many layers of not only life, but also, again, cultural heritage. So when we come to an embroidery, and if it has a repetitive element and you start counting it, most of the time it's 40. When you come to a sacred stairs, let's say in Shahizinda, which is one of the most sacred necropolises of Central Asia in Samarkand, it will be 40 steps. If you come to the breeding of the hair of the girls, it comes to the 40, and then I start building this universe of seeing 40, in fact, everywhere, and starting from tales, oral stories, rituals, healing rituals, and architecture, music, epic stories. Then I found out that this was very interesting. It actually was a Dostan singer. Dostan singer means epic storytellers, who recites these epics about male heroes, but Central Asia is also very known for the female heroic epic stories, who told me that apparently before Islam, the presence of the 40 was always female. So them becoming a male protectors, it was a part of the Islamization of the region. So the power of a protection and a continuity of life, which was originally related to a female presence, was slowly pushed out and became changed the gender, and they became male, which today I see speaking with these epic reciters, which is very important in our culture, because they are not only the carrier of oral memory and storytelling, but also in our language, Bahshe means also a healer. Bahshe is also a musician. Bahshe is also a leader of a community. So it's all these representations in one figure of a Bahshe. And he told me that today there is no space for female heroes. And I asked him, but do you know these epic stories where there is female heroes? As I said, we have a lot of female heroic epic stories. And as a living storyteller who improvises a lot, he said there is no space for that anymore because people don't want to listen. I mean, I went somewhere else, but it was all related to this presence of the 40. So the 40, it's not only the sacred number by its repetition, but there is also this idea of presence of the 40 presences that could be the presence of a tiger, a presence of a snake, a presence of a bird, a presence of a tree, a mineral, so that proposes this endless circulation of presences that unfortunately today we are blinded somehow, because I think that Abrahamic religions also made everything human-centered. And for me, looking back to the forms of the faith that were before, Either it's a shamanism, animalism, Zoroastrianism that proposed more space for other forms of life to be expressed and seen.
Okay, and the whole architecture and the place of Cellkhana, that was
That was the
can
question,
you talk
yes.
about it a little bit?
Well, Cellkhana, it's Chil means 40 and Hana, it means a room. So it's a room of a 40, which I think that it takes back to the either Nestorian Christian monks. There was Nestorian Christianity that was spread in southern Central Asia, especially around Samarkand, but also it went towards the Xinjiang, which is the Uyghurs in China today. The Nestorian Christianity was very widely spread, and you can trace these cells. And there is a lot in also south of Uzbekistan towards Termez. And I think that I got a bit so much obsessed by 40 that I start looking for the measures of the cells. And there is one I mean, it's huge, 40 meters, it's huge, so it should be for the communal. But then another possible trace of Cellkhana, it might be related to the Buddhism, because the Buddhism, as you know, it was born in the southern side of Nepal, of the Himalayas. But Buddhism couldn't pass the Himalayas. It was too high, like to jump over and go towards China. And what it did, the thought and idea, it went to the west. That's why Afghanistan, the north of Afghanistan, has a huge heritage of early Buddhist expression. And the same in the south of Uzbekistan, we have early Buddhist heritage, and as well the cells. So the idea of this space of isolation in my research and my thinking was, and I might be wrong, it is related to both, again, the syncretic melange, a connection of an Nestorian Christianity, of Buddhism, of Zoroastrianism, and also, as you say, the climatic condition of the region, because we are in a sharp continental weather where the summers get up to plus 50, and this is not an exaggeration because it can go more than plus 50, and the winters get like minus 20 and so. So to be under the earth, it's very comfortable condition. And I felt it myself before making the film, because I would go to this Cellkhana. I have to confess, I never went there for the practice. I went there more of an extreme curiosity around the 40 and what is done in Cellkhana. And so the Cellkhana is built in a way, the one that you see, and it's the only survival in Tashkent. And the architecture itself have dictated these vertical 3 screens, which is not evident, because in a film we are used to have a horizontal panoramic way of perceiving the image. And I think that it is related to our everyday life. If we look up, it's not as natural as we look at the level of 360 or on horizontality rather than in verticality. So I had this challenge and a question, like if to go for this verticality or not. But since the architecture itself was like 3-layered and vertical, so there is a space related to total life. You hear the city, it's in the middle of the most ancient cemetery of Tashkent. You see the graves. Then there is one level down, which becomes smaller, and it's already for a smaller community. So I guess it's more for the rituals of communities. And then you go one more layer down, and then it's an experience only for one person. It becomes a very individual experience, and that's where the ritual of a chilla is made. And so not to confuse you, the chilla is not made there anymore, because to make chilla, you need someone that accompanies the person to stay there for the 40 days, and people do it in a very critical moments of their lives, or they do it for the intellectual challenge, which I find also extremely beautiful. But what is interesting in this space, when you really go down, the first thing you experience is an extreme fear, because you are isolated from a light. There is no light that enters. There is a light that supposedly should enter, but there is a certain hour, a certain day of the year that it allows the sunlight to enter. Then there is an absolute sound isolation because you are under the earth. You don't hear anything, but in one moment you start hearing someone, and it brings even more fear, until the moment you understand that all the fears that you inhibit in a place, it's yourself. And to solve any problem that brought you there, it's only by a conversation that you built to yourself. And then there was a moment of a temperature, which was you go there in summertime, it's fresh. You go there in wintertime, it's warm, and there is a humidity because the weather in Uzbekistan is very dry. So for me, it was a feeling of a womb. It's really a womb experience. And since also you visualize in a cemetery that there is engravements, the Muslim engravements that go under the earth, so it's actually a way of experiencing a death. And I guess when you experience a death, if you have a chance to live again, then there is a lot of rethinking and re-evaluation that happens. That was one thought of building it in verticality, and another thought was related to the thinking. The sedentary culture, and also the poetry, our heritage of a poetry. Persian poetry, it's built on a verticality. It's not built in horizontality. It's built by words that propose and leave a lot of space for thinking and finding the point of a message. So I think that was a point also of thinking of certain verticality. The 40 you find in all of the works, I think. It's also in this horsehair projection. The poet that wrote the poet, John Temur Jandor, a very young poet, he speaks about Chiltan, which is these 40 spirits, that he hopes that they bring him a seed of khurma, of date. Yes. Then, for example, the work you see at the end, the Arslan Bab, which is unfinished work. This was very interesting because as I said, I was 40 and I said, okay, it's finished. I'm starting a new cycle of my research. I'm going to go for a forest, for presence of trees. And when I arrived to Arslan Bab, the first morning I woke up, I asked the local person, like, where shall I go for a walk alone? And he was like, well, there is a beautiful waterfall, just walk there. I arrived there and there is a cave. So I entered the cave, then there is a man, and I say, what is the name of a cave? And he says, this is called Chiltan Khona. So it's a cave where the encounter of the 40 spirits happen. So for me, it was very nice, like not to jump from one subject of a research to the other, like by a rupture or a cut, but there is a kind of accompaniment and a continuity that the subject itself proposes.
I think now we can talk about Arslan Bab, the other work which is screening at the end of the venue. I think it's your recent work that you said that it's an ongoing project. Okay, going back before the Zoroastrian time and in the shamanism and in the tribal rituals, before monotheistic and Abrahamic religions, which afterwards lends itself to Zoroastrianism for the first time. It was the worshipments of the herbs and the trees. And the most famous one of the herbs that were worshipped in the shamanism and later on in Zoroastrianism was the herb hum, or khum in Afghanistan, and it's still going on. It was, although the drinking of the wine of the grape was forbidden and was frowned upon, but drinking of hum, which was a psychedelic herb, was ritualistic, was considered as a ritual. So they were pounding this herb, as you know it was grown on the steppes, and they were passing it through, they were mixing it in a ritual in a mortar, and they were early in the morning to wake up all the tribe with the sound of the mortar, and they were passing it through the skin of the sheep, and then they were drinking it, and it had hallucinatory effects. And then when I saw your work in Arslan Bab, you mentioned the hallucinatory effect of this forest, and the girl who sleeps there, and the other maidens, I don't know, maybe 40 maidens who left her there. And you mentioned the cave of Arslan Bab, where usually the cave is a place where the 40 maidens, or 40 holy spirits sought refuge there from outer world, and sought divinity inside. So a little bit about that, about the tree of life, let's say, in the, like, if you want to just like how to put it, like to concise it, about the tree of life which exists in the whole religion, is still going on, and a bit about the book of Ajaib al-Makhluqat, the wonder of the nature, and why did you use it? Why did you bring it up in this work?
So the tree worship, it's still very active in the region. And most of the time you see two types of trees that are worshipped. It's chinar, platanus, or charmars, the walnut trees. Yeah. And I read quite a lot about it from Julian Baldick's book, The Tree of Life. This is more related to the Turkic world, the underworld, the middle world, the upper world. And I think that what is very special also in Central Asia is this worship of the ancestors. And so we have plenty of holy places, like everywhere you find holy places, and it's about worshiping ancestors. And most of the time, if it is an engravement, next to it you find a tree, a spring, a stone, a cave, so there is a connection of a human to a nature. And also I was speaking with one paleontologist who studies the region, also the north of Afghanistan, but pre-Islamic period. He told me, like, each mosque in the territory of Central Asia, if you dig it, it's like you go in layers. From Islam, you go to Zoroastrianism, then you go to Buddhism. The Buddhism meets Greeks. The Buddha was invisible before Buddhism met Hellenism, the Greeks, and Alexander the Great was in Central Asia. So when Hellenism and Buddhism met each other, the Buddha became visible. And the Buddha has this dressing that looks like a Greek dress. It was just an influence of the Greek culture. And so Julio told me that it's like unfolding the layers, Islam, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, and then you end in the natural elements, So he says it's either a spring, either a mineral, or a very old tree. So that's where it all goes up, like again in verticality, coming one after the other. So when I was thinking about the walnut trees, it was a tree that we were always warned about as we were growing up, like saying never sleep under the walnut tree. Or if somebody was bad-tempered, they would say, okay, he probably slept under the walnut tree, so he's bad-tempered, something happened. And so there was a kind of always a feeling of not being very comfortable, but also scared, but also respecting it, and also like a mystery of not being able to identify what lays beyond. And one day, as I made this film about the tiger, The Haunted, which came out from the Stains of Oxus. So The Haunted, researching on the presence of tigers, Arslan Bab, in Uzbek language, we don't define the difference of a tiger and a lion. We say Arslan for a tiger and a lion, and the forest is named Arslanbab, which means a gate of a tiger. And Arslanbab is a saint. It's actually the saint who brought this seed under his tongue. And still today, when people make rituals of his presence, he comes as a tiger. His presence is a tiger. And so when I found out about this forest, about the presence of a tiger, about the saint, so I went to that forest. And I should say that in our imaginary, I'm not speaking for Kazakhstan, because I think in Kazakhstan they have a presence of forests, while in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan we don't have a forest as in our imaginary. We have a desert, mountains, there is a Aral Sea rivers, but the forest, it is very far away from what Europeans have, you know, like a forest of mystery. We don't have it. So for me, it was a discovery, you know, like it's not that I knew about this forest. So the tree itself took me there, the hallucinative effect took me there, the curiosity of it, the tiger took me there, the legend of Arslanbab took me there. And so I said, well, I'm curious to know what is within this forest. And it's a relict forest, which is a natural forest. They cannot identify how long it exists, but it's a natural forest of walnut, and apparently this is from where the walnuts have migrated outside. It's also interesting, like in Farsi, you say char magz, which means four nuts, because, you know, it has a brain shape. There is 4 nuts inside. And also in Uzbek, but in Russian they say grеческий орех, which means a Greek nut. So there is also this speculation of that while the Alexander was there, you know, that the walnuts went out to the world. It has a story of migration as well. So this project started, you know, it started, and I should say that I'm still very fresh on it. I made one travel to Arslanbab, and then I got hijacked by the project here, which is called As We Fade. While making Arslanbab, the mountain came in and it kind of blocked me from the forest, and I understood that I should do something for the mountain, and then I will have an access to the forest. And it's curious, you know, like when you arrive to this community, it's an Uzbek community around Arslanbab and also Kyrgyz, but I end up with Uzbek because I'm Uzbek as well. So it has layers also that you should go through. And the frontal one, it's male community. And through the male community, you don't understand anything because it's more formal, no? Like they were telling me the stories of a tannin, gas, oxygen, how it works in biology. And I was like, well, I'm actually interested in something more. Can you introduce me to women? And that universe was closed. So this is still an ongoing process. Yeah, I mean, there is 2-3 stories that I managed to record that you see in the film. But referring to the miniatures of Makhluqat Ajaib, which means incredible imaginary beasts, it was for the editing purposes, you know, like I looked at the heritage to which we relate, how these imaginary creatures were represented, because when people speak about hallucinative effect of the forest, they speak about creatures that are not identified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I think the last video that we are going to discuss is we have to jump over to the 12th century and Islam and Sufism. And the most famous Sufi, who is the first martyr of Islam, is called, and it's Shahabuddin Sohrawardi, who was a Sufi, but he was like a polymath, but with reformist idea, and who was killed because of his reformist idea. And we are going to talk about 18,000 worlds, and I assume it comes from the Quranic verse that is the base of the idea of the Shahabuddin Sohrawardi, that the God says in Quran that the world that I brought this world, that I made this world from 18,000 universes. And then he discusses about, Sohrawardi discusses about he jumps back, he goes back to the origins of Zoroastrianism, which is in Zoroastrianism as the first monotheistic religion, believes that God is the light and darkness is the Ahriman or is the devil. So he believes that we should worship light. And Sohrawardi, as though he was Muslim, but he becomes interested in this idea, and he adopts this idea, and he believes that the duality of essence and existent, which was the Platonic philosophy, although he was believed in Plato and he was like highly he had highly regarded Plato as the philosopher of all time, but he was believed that in the essence instead of existence, and he was believed that the whole essence was built on light, but the whole universe, these 18,000 universes, were shaped based on the different grades of light. And I saw that you are interested in this philosophy of light against darkness and the philosophy of Shahabuddin Sohrawardi, and you made this work of 18,000 universes, in which I think you made, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure, I'm gonna ask you about it, if it's a dakhma that the moon and the sun is coming up behind it at the screenshot. It's not a dakhma, it's not a silent tower, it's just a mountain. And there's another mythology that the light, that when the universe was about to make, when the god of light, which is sun, was about to make the universe, was become out of hiding behind a mountain, but he had to make the universe, which was in Pahlavi Persian is Giti, and has the same root in etymology as the Giti is the Gav, and Gav is the cow, and the light was looking for a cow to sacrifice it to create the universe. And a crow comes and the bird comes and says, where's the cow? And thus the universe was made out of light. So, and I saw that you mentioned it and you saw it perfectly in your video. And let's talk about Sohrawardi, and how did you find this philosophy interesting, and how did you film it?
Well, I think that well, you said a lot about Shahabuddin Sohrawardi. He is the founder of Ishraqiyya, which is a direction of which is called illumination in mystical dimension of Islam, and this is also a syncretism of Platonism with Zoroastrianism, in fact. And if you read the books or the writings of Sohrawardi, which is from 12th century, they are extremely advanced. And I think that we kind of have, instead of making an evolution, we went backwards, as he speaks about radiation, about grades of light, grades of color, dimensions, spaces, and it's way far beyond what we think what a faith is. And I think that this is something we were speaking with you yesterday, Sheida, that when we speak about syncretism or a spirituality, it's not limited to the understanding of the confessions that we are aware of, but it's a space beyond. And I think that in Sohrawardi, it's exactly what we encounter. For me, like getting to know a Sohrawardi, I should say it's not a direct encounter, but it took time to get to know him, and it's thanks to Henri Corbin's books, especially A Man of Light, but also knowing about Najmuddin Kubra, which was from Khwarezm, and the connection related to the light emission of a human body, which you can see also on the embroidery there. The light and the color always changes, and it was actually a study of Najmuddin Kubra, which is related to Ishraqiyya with Sohrawardi, how the light and the intensity of a light and a color changes of a human body, you know. So there is that, but speaking about 18,000 worlds, which is on Sakizmin Olam, it's an expression that I would hear from my childhood every day, that there is 18,000 worlds. There was no explanation. I mean, in certain moment, the beauty of it is that it's very liberating, you know, 18,000 worlds. It's about the endless coexistence, that there is never an end or a beginning, that it's an endless rotation, and especially the beginning of the text, which speaks about intensity, endless intensity of a radiation of light. I mean, you travel whenever you want. So I think that also for me to enter this work of 18,000 worlds, it's very abstract understanding. Even if I found the text of Suhrawardi, I needed to ground myself. And I did it through a text of my great-grandfather, Abdul Aziz Turkistani, who was a part of not Ishraqiyya Yassaviyya, but within the mystical Islam. And the writing of my great-grandfather helps me kind of to enter this work and to be not like an imaginary and pretend to know, because I don't know anything, but it's more have a permission to make a work about it, because there is a heritage within the family, or an attempt to approach this knowledge within the family. So that's how the 18,000 worlds was made.
I think if you don't have anything else, we can wrap it up. And I want to wrap it up with this sentence that when the history is silent, mythology speaks. And if there is a question for Saodat, I can leave the microphone to the audience. If not, we can wrap it up here.
Good evening. I'm Marriott. I'm Kazakh, and I want to ask you a question that I did that I make to myself. What is for you to be a Central Asian, and what is for you to be an artist from Central Asia?
Well, thank you for the question. I mean, it's very difficult to answer it, because I don't want to limit my practice only to the region. And I think it's important that the works are read not by the definition of geography, but are read in overall human a connection. And it can be connection not only related to the knowledge or information, but first of all to certain sensitivities that are evoked or at least attended to be evoked by the works and by the audiovisual experience that you live. And for me, it's more opening a floor for each of the audience to make their travel. And so for me, it's more like to provoke and to pose the questions rather than impose my story. And but to be Central Asian, on the other hand, I also feel there is a certain type of a necessity to speak out, not only for a certain country, but to speak for the whole region, and also to share the experience, or to share at least a certain observation that happened during the 20 years with the younger generation of artists. I think that in that level of kind of experience exchange, then I can think about the Central Asia. But on a global sense or an artistic perspective, then my desire, of course, would be that I hope that it's not divided into a kind of a geography. Thank you.